Transition partners take mental health very seriously. We are now supporting Claro Mental Health Charity, who are local and based in Harrogate. We are working closely with Richard Kenny, who is the IT director at TechBuyer. Claro operates as a commercial workshop making goods for businesses which enable those with long-term mental health conditions to function in a voluntary real work environment. We would love it if you can join us in supporting this amazing cause and charity and donate what you can. Any amount would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, and thanks to all our listeners.
Hi, this is the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. My name's Elly Greening.
And my name's Sandra Stewart.
On this podcast, we will be interviewing some of the UK's greatest tech leaders. We'll be discussing war stories, battle scars, and their learnings from their journeys.
Hopefully, you will pick up some great tips, learn from others' experiences, and have a good laugh along the way.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So very happy to have you listening and tuning in today, because this week we have the fantastic Henrique Boregio, who is the CTO at Primephonic. So Primephonic is a fast-growing music streaming service that has been dubbed by the media as the Spotify of classical music. By building an app dedicated entirely to classical music, they are reinventing the digital classical musical experience and reigniting a global passion for the genre. Available in over 150 countries with offices based in New York and Amsterdam. Henrique is joining us from Amsterdam today, so it's so fantastic to have him here. He's an experienced CTO with a demonstrable background in early age startups and scale-ups. So hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi Henrique, nice to meet you.
Same
Fantastic
here.
to have you on the show. So it'd be really interesting to start with. Always like to start with a nice open question to understand how your tech career started and how you got into tech, how you got to where you are today. Understand that you've moved around a little bit, so it'd be good to tell the listeners and viewers of a bit about your background. And I think you went from sales to tech, my understanding as well. So that's really interesting as well. So let's tell us all about your journey then.
Sure. Well, where do I start? Let's see. I think if I had to think back about when I was first introduced maybe to tech, I think I have I share quite the common story of early kid, maybe early my teens, kind of I was introduced to this thing, the computer, and I think eventually that's where the interest grew out of. I spent pretty much all day, all night looking into computers. Eventually I found out that there's this thing called programming, and then you could actually tell it to do stuff. So I started buying books and then just basically teaching myself how to code. Not really working towards anything in particular, just learning, small things here and there. So that also led me to decide what to study. So I studied basically software engineering in Argentina, where I was living at the time.
Cool.
I'm originally from Brazil, but then when I was a kid, I moved around a little bit. I ended up living, because of my parents' works, ended up living in the Cayman Islands, then New York. Wow. Then Argentina, so that's why.
Very jealous.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah, some really nice memories. And then, I eventually landed in Argentina. So I did my high school and then college there. And after I graduated, I went straight into kind of the typical jobs that a software engineer would go into. So that's mainly programming. I worked as a programmer not too much, I think like 1 or 2 years, and then I felt like I felt a little bit like I was outside of where the real action was happening. So then I tried my luck with more kind of sales and pre-sales. First I went into pre-sales, technical pre-sales at a large telecom company in Argentina. I spent 2 years there, but it was way too corporate. Tens of thousands of employees. Used to be a public company before. Then it was privatized. So you can imagine the mindset was not so much on let's get things going.
Yeah.
Then I switched into a really like hardcore sales, picking up the phone, calling 50 people a day. I lasted 6 months. That was enough for me to know that, well, I don't want to do this. And then I eventually made myself back into the tech world. So I worked mainly as taking up different roles as developer, as tech lead, kind of growing from there. And I think around 2014, 2015, I also started getting this feeling like I was used to moving around a lot when I was a kid. And then I felt like I had been in Argentina for a bit too much already. So I started looking for possibilities outside. So I remember, for some reason, I picked the Netherlands and I really started sending a lot of CVs. None of the CVs went through, but by sheer luck, I think a company, very, very small company back then, reached out to me. And after a lot of back and forth, I decided to join them. So that was my previous employer.
And you'd never been to Amsterdam before, had you? Never been to
No. I came here for a couple of weeks before I officially said yes to the company. But prior to that, I did come here. I came here for a job interview at Booking.com.
Yes. Hey, right. Okay.
Yeah, completely forgot about that. But then, it was a little bit of quite shady actually, because this company, it was a very, very early stage startup, to the point where it had no name. Right? It was just, I think there was no website, there was nothing. It was just like a supermarket online venture kind of thing.
That is a huge leap of faith.
It is. But then eventually,
and a very big challenge.
Yeah. But I was so eager to come here, and then I got to meet the founders, got to have calls with the CEOs, and then he also said, "Why don't you come here for a couple of weeks, see for yourself that we are normal, right? We're not like weird people." That led me to actually move to the Netherlands, and I spent almost 4 years working at that company. And about 2 years ago, I moved on to Primephonic, which is where I'm currently working at.
Fantastic. So it'd be interesting to find out a little bit more about your previous company and like your experiences of, obviously, like Elly said, that was, big leap of faith and there was no name. You must have learned so much. And had been involved in so much. I don't know if you're involved in helping them to set up the name, and it'd be really good, I think, because we do have from time to time quite a lot of kind of CTOs and leaders that have come from that startup background or that would aspire to move into that sort of position. It'd be interesting to tell the listeners in a little bit more detail what your involvement was, what the challenges were, any pain points, and then I guess same for Primephonic as well.
Sure. So I think with regards to the previous company, by the way, it's called Picnic, and that's basically it. That's an online supermarket. I think that's basically no physical stores, anything like that. So when I joined them, I was lucky enough to be one of the early tech hires, right? So that means I was working exclusively on the mobile side. So it's a company that offers, at least from a product perspective, they only offer iOS and Android apps. So I was working as part of the product team, pushing basically the only user-facing app, and that was, I think, the most exciting experience was being part of seeing the company go from basically from very early stage to really scaling up significantly. Right? I think when I joined, I don't know the exact number, but probably the engineering team was maybe less than 10 people. And by the time I left, it was probably around 60 or 70. And the company itself was already the thousands of employees, right? So I think experiencing that out, the change from the way you work to the processes to just the culture itself, right? Going from knowing every single person in the company to suddenly you go down to the kitchen, you're making yourself a coffee and you don't know if you're talking to maybe a new hire, a candidate, and you have no idea, right? So so that was quite exciting. And then I think it's also what gave me kind of the knowledge that that I wanted to get, or the experience that I wanted to get to really formalize the move more towards the management side, right? Because I think if you're one of the early hires in a company, you're also sort of forced to pick up quite a lot of things that are outside of your formal scope of work, right? Just because you've been around, you're one of the older guys, you know how things work, and you're also forced to constantly kind of innovate the way you work, right? Because I think I always like to say that by definition, I think a startup is always behind where it should be, right? From maybe from internal processes to employment benefits to anything,
there's always so much
always
to do,
behind.
isn't there? Yeah.
And you're always, you're understaffed. You have an infinite list of things, so you're always in kind of survival mode. So I actually really enjoyed that, and it was also one of the reasons why I decided to move on, because I felt like after 4 years, the company was no longer in survival mode. It was really in kind of optimization mode, right? There was a business, the business model worked, and it was really about getting that, percentage point here, percentage point there, or scaling the team, from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on. So I felt like I got to learn quite a bit of I learned what probably 10, 20 years of experience condensed in 4 years.
What would you say your biggest during that time? What would you say your biggest learning was?
The biggest learning, I think it's probably the to be okay with things being good enough. I think that's the number one point that I take with me, and also in working in any startup. I think especially now, you hear stories, companies that are a lot more public in what they do, right? So I think you have a tendency to look at the successful cases, right? You look at Airbnb, you look at Uber, you look at these huge companies with infinite resources, and you have a tendency, I think, as a team to think that, well, if you're not at that level, then you're not good enough. I think that's the completely the wrong mindset when you're in a startup, right? You're constantly forced to kind of make really tough decisions into where are we going to spend our time on, right? And if we spend our time on one thing, that means also saying no to 20 other things, right? And I think being able to recognize that you don't have to be good at every single aspect of every single thing that you do, and really allow yourself to take as many shortcuts as possible to get to whatever you want to prove, right? And that's maybe, at least in the case of Primephonic, what we try to do is always ship products, ship something, ship a feature, right? So to have that as kind of the end goal always, not to let yourself think that, we're going to ship this, but if it works out, we won't have the perfect automated way to make this feature live the next 5 years. Well, I think that's fine, right? Because it allows you to make mistakes quicker. And most of the stuff that you make in a startup, maybe they won't work out the way you originally thought of. That you may even, the amount of time you put into something in your brain doesn't necessarily correlate to how successful that will be once you push it out to users, right? I think that's the number one thing that I saw during my time at Picnic. That if maybe on the surface you look at this amazing product, it's beautiful, but then you open up the box and you say, "Oh, Jesus Christ, that's how we built it." but you met the goal, right? And once you know that something works, you can always go back and make it pretty, make it efficient, make it cost effective. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so Primephonic, you've been with Primephonic for about 2 years, did you say? Yeah. So how's the 2 years at Primephonic gone for you, and what challenges and pain points are you experiencing, or have you experienced?
Sure. So I think when I joined, Primephonic was a very different company. I think I joined right about the time, I think the first week actually, that we had the official launch of our product. Right, so what we have is, we have a music streaming app for basically only classical music. When I joined, we had launched in the Netherlands, UK, and US. Those were the three main markets that we were focusing on to explore, basically see if we had product market fit. And also at that time, I was the first true technical hire. We had outsourced product development to a development agency here in the Netherlands, and also outsourced different parts of development to other companies. For example, the whole music streaming part was outsourced. We were using technology from a company in Singapore. We had about 10 developers in this dev agency here in the Netherlands. And we also had another dev agency in the Netherlands working on a separate part with 2 guys from Ukraine working on something else. So it was a bit of a managerial nightmare, I guess. And that was, I think it's also one of the reasons why I was hired, was to really build up the in-house tech team, right? I think that the moment we launched the product, we saw that there was product market fit. We were seeing a good number of downloads, people were subscribing. And then there was also the need to bring all of that tech product knowledge in-house, right? So I think the whole I joined, I think around September of 2018. Basically the last part of 2018 and all of 2019, the main focus, at least for myself, was on hiring a team of tech people. So that was hiring about 10, 12 people in 12 months, which was quite challenging, of course, because you're hiring people into a team that doesn't exist, right? Yeah. And to make it even more complicated, it's not that it doesn't exist. There's already a team in motion, but it's not the Primephonic team. It's the team from the tech agency. So you have to be very open about the candidates that, well, your initial 2-3 months, you're going to be onboarded, kind of outside of Primephonic, which is a cultural shock, right? So that was quite challenging, I think, going through that process. I don't think anybody had really a good idea of what the best way was to go about it. I think the good thing for us was that you usually hear a lot of horror stories about dev agencies delivering or under-delivering, overcharging. That was definitely not our case, right? We had our tech we're based in Amsterdam. This agency is based in The Hague, so we're just a train ride away. And we would actually spend a lot of time, a lot of days with them. So they were highly technical people, very senior, really good at what they did. So they left us with a really good foundation, really good baseline of the
Sounds like they were really integrated into the business, like a proper partner.
Yeah, so they do, I think they really like to join early stage companies as kind of like this technical co-founder role, right? So they not only build the product, but they also provide kind of everything that goes with it, like product owners, scrum masters, quality assurance.
So it was a full team. That's brilliant.
Cool, fantastic. So how many have you got now? Where are you kind of at? What stage of the business are you at now?
So I think company-wide, we're about 40, 45 people. So we also had to move offices mid last year to a bigger one, which is, not being used right now because of Corona times. But yeah, we went from, I think when I joined, the company was about 15 people or so, if I recall correctly. So also quite a significant growth to go from 15 to 40, 45 people in less than 2 years. So I think for now it's a good size, out of which about 25%, that's 10 to 15 people are actively working on the tech product side.
Brilliant. So I've got a couple of questions now. You've told me all of that, which is really interesting. So the first one is setting the culture, because that was something you clearly got to do. You were the first person in there, a CTO, to come and completely set the culture for the team. How did you go around that, and what were your hopes, and what's the reality of the culture like at Primephonic?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because culture is always a tough thing, right? Because I think you can write it down, you can have a vision of what you want your culture to be like, but I think in practice, I think at least in my case, I found out that culture is usually something that you suddenly wake up one day and say, okay, so this is the culture, right? This is what we have, and it's usually maybe something happens within the team, within the company, and you kind of see people's attitude around it. You know, and it's usually some sort of crisis, right? It's a service outage, it's something happening, and that's when you get to experience kind of how people react to it. So in our case, it's not like we didn't have a culture. The culture was there, but we were also very aware that, well, if you're bringing in 10 new people into a team of 15, that culture is going to drastically change, right? So I think the way we always had a very, it's a very, I really don't like to say family, right? Because I think jobs are jobs, family is family. But that was the culture at the time, and it worked really well with Primephonic. You know, a lot of team outings. We had things like, we still do, things like we cook lunch every day. You know, so somebody cooks ourselves. We cook some.
Oh, really?
It's getting tougher and tougher. It was okay to cook for 15 people. Now to cook for 40, it's becoming.
Oh my God, I wouldn't be able to do that.
How do you find the time to do that and run a startup?
So that's also part of the culture, I think, right?
That's
I think
really cool.
You're
What's your
holding
dish of choice? What do you cook when it's
Oh my gosh, I never cooked, to be honest. I think
you got away with it.
Yeah, I've bought salad and opened up the salad.
Oh, there we go.
And that's what I did.
But
But I think at one point, I think we were also realizing that we were eating lunch at like 2-3 p.m. But it's interesting because it's also part of the, I think what I mentioned about a startup always being behind. It's suddenly we're 30 people, but we still want to have this this culture of cooking every day, but it's not really working out, right?
getting a little bit tricky now. That's really interesting. And I think I know when we spoke before today's recording, you mentioned how kind of interesting it was that you're able to bring talent from all across the world, right? You're allowed to hire. There's a lot more visa freedom, isn't there, over in Amsterdam? So you're able to hire people a little bit more freely than we are. But I think it'd be interesting to find out more about that. And that's obviously played a key role into the culture that you've created. It's probably quite a young environment, I'm sure, with people relocating for the vacancies and opportunities. But how do you attract and retain talent? Because Amsterdam's getting super competitive.
Yeah, it is. It's highly competitive. I think also, well, first of all, the amount of cool startups here. It's every day there's probably multiple startups being created. So there's competition there, and there's also it's relatively. It's quite simple and easy to bring people from abroad, right? So there's actually quite a lot of incentives from the government to do so. So I think there's really no reason why you wouldn't open up your vacancies to worldwide, right? And I think as a startup in Amsterdam, you're almost forced to do that, because if you only focus in the Netherlands, you're just not going to fill your hiring needs. There isn't enough people. But I think in our case, either way, we try to do it. I think we said, well, let's, to gain some time, let's see if we find people from the Netherlands. I think on the first month we said, well, it's not going to work. Not enough candidates. But I think how to get back to your question, how to attract talent. I think in a way, I think we were a bit lucky with the type of industry that we are in, right? So music streaming, it's hard to find somebody that's not passionate about music. Maybe not necessarily classical music, but everybody loves music, right? So to get to
isn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting platform for tech, right?
Yeah,
and it's much harder for my previous employee to sell like a supermarket, online supermarket. I think you start off at a lower level of the excitement scale, right? But whenever you hear, I think also the engineering challenges that come from building a streaming service. A lot of developers are aware of that, and they want to work on these huge. It's about scalability. It's about giving audio to people. Quick in good quality. That's also one of one of our differentiators that we offer in high res 24-bit lossless. That's the highest possible quality. So there's quite some technical challenges to build those services. I think that's number one. So you were lucky. If you're not in a cool industry, then you have a tougher job. But I think what I also like, which is also, I try to look back on the reasons why I joined early stage startups when I was younger, right? I think you either, you have people that really look for, well, either they want to join a very well-established company where, the priorities are clear, the 2, 3, 4, 10-year vision is clear, and they just need manpower, or you have this mindset that you really want to help to grow the business, right? So our priorities last probably a month, or a month to a quarter. That's how fast we can think, right? So I think for some people that's definitely a selling point. And we also see people coming from bigger companies, and they even they take a salary cut to join startups because they get fed up of this slowness to respond to industry, to best practices, to something like that. I think the cool thing about us selling the position to work at a startup is that the amount of impact that you have on your customers, you see it right away, right? To give you one idea, we have one guy working on the iOS app and another guy working on the Android app. If they go on holiday, then there's no more updates for the iOS app. So that means tens of thousands of users just won't get an update. So to have that sort of ownership and responsibility, if you're a product person, it's a very unique position to be in, right? That you can actually shape a product. You can talk to everybody, right? From designers to CEO, to customers coming in and just having coffee and talking to them. That's the kind of connection to the product that you won't get if you go into a huge company. Those are the two biggest I think selling points when you try when we
sold it to me. You've done a good job. It's them sales skills you've still got.
Fantastic. So I'd be really interested to find out a bit more about some of your what you feel like your one greatest achievement is. Obviously you came from a technical background, you went into sales and you've gone back into tech, so you kind of done both. You kind of come up through that route of doing both. I assume as well when you worked in sales there's probably some really great stories and achievements to talk about. So what would you say your one greatest achievement has been throughout your career so far?
That's good. One greatest achievement. Wow.
I mean, he's super young, so you've got a long way to go.
I'm not that young, but thanks. I think it varies. I think I wouldn't say it's necessarily an achievement, but I think being okay with my technical background is something that I had to come to terms with, actually, and so I see that as a plus, because I started looking into computers when I was, like I said, early teens, and then all the way through college when I graduated, 22, 23, 24, I don't remember when. I was focused on tech. I think at some point I said, I feel like life happens outside of tech, so I wanted to move out of it. And being able to accept that, I think that was call it a seeing the light at the end of the tunnel or whatever, but actually say, okay, tech is really what I like. If you drop me at a bookstore, I won't go into the novels, I won't go into the I'm going to look at the geeky tech manuals. So I think embracing that and finding a way to build a career where I get to use tech, but not necessarily be in the nitty details of. And then the most recent accomplishments or achievements for me is actually making the formal transition into kind of the highly technical career path. So that's developer, tech lead, that sort of career path. Moving into the management side. That's also something that could have gone both ways. Either I realized that I hate it and I want to move back, or just that I suck at it. And I think so far, I think things are working out quite okay. So that's
like that transition that you made from development, like coding, into sales as well is a pretty like cool achievement. You know, it's quite unique. Not often, it's unique, and it's not often you know, people can go from being a developer, a kind of like, I guess, geeky technical person, into sales, and then obviously grow themselves into, you know, CTO for startups. And it's a great achievement there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I knew actually before I went into sales, if there was one thing that I hated, it was sales, right? So I figured, well, why not try it, right? If I lose 6 months, I lose a year. But I think it's good to sort of challenge yourself, and at least you come out of it saying, okay, I was right. So I hate sales.
Cool. So with your experience in tech, obviously you've been in tech for a long time, you're very passionate about tech. What's your opinion of the future of tech right now?
Well, if I knew, let's see.
Crystal ball.
Yeah. So I think it's I think we are seeing a shift in how if you go into the coding side. I think traditionally, ever since computers were invented, they sort of relied on us, you know, developers, to tell them what to do, right? And we've been able to build a lot of cool stuff, but it's always kind of bound or restricted by, well, our ability to code things that computers can do. I think over the past maybe 5-10 years, with the whole rise of, you know, artificial intelligence and that sort of stuff, yes, there's been a lot of hype around it. So, you know, the hype and then what it has delivered, there's still kind of a huge gap there. But I think from the technical side, it's really showing a completely different way of building products, right? So things like, you know, if you look at just look at maybe to go to the medical field. You know, maybe you have a diagnosis of X-rays or whatever, right? Scans. So before, it used to be, humans needed to look at it and kind of say, oh, this doesn't look good, whatever. Now you can program computers to kind of detect those. And now in the next phase, if you start implementing machine learning AI, you're moving potentially towards a scenario where, I think we're already there in some levels, computers outperform humans, right? So we're not telling them, look for this spot, that spot. You're just feeding it 50 years worth of images and diagnosis, and it's figuring out that diagnosis, right? So I think that will unlock a lot of things. We're already seeing that in the medical field. We're seeing that with self-driving cars. Developers are not saying, this is the corner of Avenue 1 and Avenue B, and there's a stop sign there and there's a stop sign there, but it's figuring out those things by itself. So I think that will help to get technology, in a few years' time, really make a big jump now to the level where the scope of the work of developers will also significantly change, right? I think that's also a little bit where I hope technology goes into. On the flip side, I also see that we also see a lot of things being made like Snapchat filters. That's where kind of the brains are going into, right? People are PhDs and stuff. They're creating Snapchat filters instead of answering bigger challenges. But I think that would be kind of maybe a bit the idealistic. But I think it would be nice to see technology applied to really making us live better, or getting better diagnosis, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting then when you were talking about AI, like clearly your eyes lit up and it's something you're really interested and passionate about. but I'd love to know, is there any other areas in tech that you're like really passionate about, whether it be diversity, inclusivity, or anything? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning and that you want to make a difference with?
Yeah, I think it's just the possibilities of building stuff. Actually, no, it's not necessarily one specific industry. Of course, I'm working right now in classical music, and there's quite a lot of challenges that we're trying to solve. So that's something. Today that's what gets me up in the morning. I don't feel like we're there in solving those challenges. But I think for me, it's also that unknown factor, right? There might be something that happens, and you could use technology to solve that. But nobody really knows how is it going to be used, or what the next big thing is. I do feel like we haven't seen the next big thing for a few years. I know if you look at maybe the last kind of really big revolution was mobile smartphones. That's already 10, 15 years old. There have been different industries that made a little bit of a, hey, I'm here, and then disappeared. But I do think it's mostly the kind of being connected sort of devices, right? So the especially in the medicine, I think I really feel like we're falling behind in technology. And then with regards to what you mentioned about diversity, don't really have a strong opinion about that, other than I think there is kind of a big diversity gap in tech. I'm not sure to what extent that is. That's just kind of, if I look back at my university, right? So if I look back at my team now, of course there is diversity. There's quite a lot of diversity. I think we have people from a lot of different nationalities. But I also think it's a little bit of an idealistic scenario, because you're never going to get to that point where everybody's fully happy, right? Because that's just how society is, right? If I look back at my university days, 90% of my colleagues, students, they were men, right? So it's only normal to say, okay, when you join a company, you're going to be looking at the same sort of percentage points, unfortunately. So I think that happens with any industry. I think there's also industries that are mostly women. Don't really have a strong opinion on that.
I think it's tech is just general. In general, it's something to be conscious about, and something that we should all try and help and assist. And you've constantly just got to learn new things. Like I've done a lot in diversity and inclusivity before, but at the moment I'm trying to learn more about sustainability in tech, because that's something I didn't know anything about. It's you've just got to consciously learn new things, haven't you, about what we can do in tech to be able to make a real difference. So that's interesting. This one's a bit of a funny question. I guess it's a bit off the radar, but if you could change one thing in your life, what would it be and why?
If I could change one thing in my life.
Stayed in the Cayman Islands?
I would have stayed my whole life there, maybe. I'm not sure if I would change anything, actually, because I think, of course, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I also the mistakes also shape you, right? So I would be actually a bit scared to go back and change things, and maybe I would end up in maybe somewhere where that's not as nice.
So your path could have been completely different.
Yeah, so I think I'm pretty okay with where I am now.
I always believe in everything happens for a reason. So I don't know about changing things, but yeah.
What we always love to end the podcast with finding about your plans for the future, like what big things you've got going on within the business, personally, what are you excited about, any big conferences you're attending? Obviously they've all got to go out the window this year, but anything on your agenda that is something you're really excited about?
So let's say when I'm looking into the future, well, on a personal side, I just became a father, so that's
congratulations.
21 days ago, I think.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So really,
boy or a girl?
It's a boy.
Oh,
lovely. What have you called him?
Vicente.
Oh,
That's like a Spanish Vincent.
yeah.
Kind of.
Oh, sweet.
Have you been sleeping okay? You look quite well rested.
Thanks. But yeah, no, not at all. I think tonight I slept maybe 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You remember those days?
Yeah, I've got a little boy. He's 5 now. But yeah, still have a few sleepless nights. Doesn't stop. It gets better.
But yeah, on the personal side, looking forward to that. Seeing how that plays out, I guess. And then on the professional side, well, there are a couple of conferences that I like to attend. Of course, they've all been cancelled. But the ones that I really enjoy are they're usually European. So that's, I think, the 2 big ones that I went that I've been going to. It's the Next Web and Web Summit. I think those are really good because they're tech, but they're not necessarily focused on anything particularly, right? So I think you also get a chance to see kind of the visionaries of the industry, the ones that really talk about not what they're building now, but maybe what the world is going to look like 10 years from now. And I think it's every now and then it's also good to take a step back from your daily responsibilities and just be reminded that you are in a really, really cool industry, right? And then that life is not just about ticketing systems and backlogs and releases, but also to have that bigger picture of what's to come. But unfortunately, I'm not sure those conferences will happen anytime soon.
I think lots of stuff's going virtual now, isn't it? There's a few conferences that we've been going to that will go virtual, but it's just different. It's never the same. No, not at all. You can never get that networking feel, because that's the best bit, right? When you have the conversations with people, you meet new people, interesting people from all over, and I think that's obviously the key bit, the most exciting bit again, isn't it? But it's been fantastic hearing your story. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. Henrique, if anyone wants to get in touch, is it best via LinkedIn, Twitter? What's the best form of contact for you?
I think LinkedIn is the best because I don't have Twitter. So it's a simple choice.
Amazing, but don't get in touch too much because he's just had a baby.
Fantastic. Oh, it's great to hear your story. Really interesting. I'm very inspired now. We look forward to going live with this one.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for sharing.